because it's still a bit early here, Luke. It's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So
Okay, so
normally we do shows a little bit later in the day also. So we just record this one and put it out there later. But again, thank you for coming on. You know, I remember following your career from the youth team going forward, you know, watching your debut. So to be able to speak to you, for me, it's very special. Thank you so much for taking out the time.
No worries, it's fine. No worries at all.
So what brought you from Cambridge to being in the Manchester United youth team?
I was playing football in Cambridge for the Cambridge schools team, where the best players from all the different local schools play together, and would play for that team every Saturday. And it was there that I got scouted to go to Manchester United to go up for a trial. Before that, I was playing for Arsenal every Sunday, playing for them. So I go and train there once a week. But from the moment I went up to Manchester on trial, I loved the place, the environment, how you were made to feel. It was such an incredible place to be. Obviously, the class of 92 had just sort of were making their impact in the team. The club was winning the league most seasons. So it was an incredible honour to be invited up there to go on trial, and then to get signed as well was an amazing feeling, really.
So did you meet Sir Alex when you went there, or before signing your youth forms, or was it Eric Harrison?
So it was Eric Harrison who'd been involved. It was a lot of the schoolboy coaches. I went up there for a week's trial the first time, and at the end of the week we played a game against Nottingham Forest at Littleton Road, and Sir Alex was there watching. It was an under-15s game, and by the time I'd got back to Cambridge, he'd phoned up my mum and asked me if I'd wanted to sign for asked permission if I could sign for the club. So for him to do that, and the manager of the first team, there was only one place I was going to sign after that. And I think that was really the genius of Sir Alex, the way that he treated people, the way that he built relationship with people, and how he got everyone working so hard to make the club go forward. And it was to hear that, obviously, as a 14-year-old boy, that Sir Alex had phoned my house up. But it weren't just me that he'd do that for. It'd be all the young players. I was there at Carrington as a first-team player in the canteen, and there was some under 10 and 11 academy boys there. And Sir Alex knew every one of their names, knew where they were from, and just knew everything. And it's that tiny little details that made him the special person that he was, and the incredible success that he achieved at the club.
So Luke, when you signed on, like you said, Eric Harrison was the one you were coached by. We keep hearing from everyone that Eric was really tough. He was old school. He was really tough. So at the time when you signed up, obviously it was a level higher than what you were used to. Did you think to yourself, what have I got myself into? And Eric, you know, is it worth coming here and being with Eric every morning? Or did you realize that Eric was that way, and that in the long run it would benefit you?
Yeah, I think we all knew when we moved up full-time to start our scholarships at 16 that the reputation, obviously, that Eric had as an incredible coach, but a tough guy as well. But the other side of it, he always took time to build a relationship with you as well. I don't think he wouldn't just shout at you for the sake of it. He also had your best interests at heart, so would build a real strong relationship. So then when the time was right and he did have a pop at you, as it were, or have a go at you, you trusted him, so you sort of took it on board a lot more. I think if someone's just continually shouting at you over and over again, I think you could lose a little bit of respect for them if you don't trust them or respect them as well. So he always took that time to build the respect and the trust of the players. And of course, he'd let you know if your standards weren't up to scratch for a club. Obviously, standards have got to be extremely high at a club like Manchester United.
Absolutely.
So when you joined Manchester United, were you always a forward or attacking player, or did you change your position once you got into the coaching system and maybe the coach found that you were better in one role than the other?
Yeah, so all my schoolboy career, I was a striker. I was really fast and I used to score lots of goals. When I moved up to Manchester, I probably played as a striker for about 6-7 months, but there was 4 strikers in our age group. So I got pushed out to play a wide on the wing. And I loved it. It suited me perfectly, really, because where my strengths were sort of running fast, running quickly with the ball. I probably weren't the strongest when I was playing as a centre forward to hold the ball up. So it suited my game and the strengths of my game to being moved out to the wing. And I played on the left or the right wing, and I was so much more effective there than I was playing as a central striker.
Do you have any fond memories of Eric Harrison? If he did something special, or maybe something when he scolded you for not doing what you were supposed to do, or some coaching story that stuck with you till this day?
Yeah, I think similar to Sir Alex, Eric was someone that you always wanted to impress. So there was nothing better than Eric saying he'd done well. And I remember just going up there in my first few weeks, and I was just working my socks, so I didn't really know what to expect, really. I remember him pulling me to one side probably about 3-4 weeks into my YTS and just saying, you're doing really well, you're working so hard, and just really emphasising how important it was to work hard. That was the most important thing. Before the football skills or anything came into it, you had to be prepared to work hard. So I think he just really emphasised that message to me, and it made me feel so good to get praise from, obviously, Eric Harrison as well, who was such a well-respected, incredible coach at the club.
Hassan?
Luke, around the time that you broke into the first team, obviously that was the time right after the treble. So at that time, you've got David Beckham, you've got Ryan Giggs, and I know we had Jesper, who obviously had that awful injury. So did the manager tell you that he saw you as someone who was, going to go on and, I guess, be a backup to these guys or play with them or, come in for them from time to time? Or is that a conversation he didn't have with you at all?
No, I probably didn't have. I came back from Royal Antwerp. I was on loan in Belgium. And when I come back from there, I was sort of straight in the first team squad. And I was just I weren't going to ask any questions. I couldn't hardly believe that I was in the squad with these world-class players. So I weren't sort of knocking on Sir Alex's door saying that I should be playing instead of Giggs or Beckham. But I was just sort of pinch myself every day. I sort of moved up to Manchester from a small village in Cambridge and was suddenly playing and training with these world-class superstars every day. So I don't think it would have been a conversation that the manager would have had to have with me, because I was so delighted and buzzing to be involved, because I never really thought that I would be. So it was... I sort of knew in my head that I was a backup player, but to be honest with you, to be a backup player was quite an achievement anyway.
Okay, so Luke, you've played in some big matches. You've played against Bayern Munich in the Champions League as well. You scored against Leeds, which is always good for a United fan. So what is your favorite match in your playing career for United?
I think probably the game where I came on and scored against Leeds. I remember we weren't playing great in the first half. It was a bit of a scrappy game. And I think Nicky Butt got injured during the first half, and the manager said that I was going on. And I just remember the moment where I scored, and so I think Scholesy put it through to Ollie, and Ollie had quite a weak shot at the goalkeeper, and it was Nigel Martin in goal for Leeds, who was a top goalkeeper, but somehow he sort of just spilt it. And my eyes just lit up, and I was thinking, I can't miss this. I'm right in front of the goal. All I've got to do is tap it in. And the feeling that I got when I just kicked the ball in the goal was amazing. And like you say, to score in such a big game against such big rivals, that was definitely my best moment on the pitch at the club. I think there's probably about 25 minutes left or so, and I was just on the pitch praying that Leeds wouldn't score, so it went down that I scored the winning goal. But I think Mark Viduka scored for Leeds towards the end to make it 1-1. But it was, to score in that game, in such a big game, was definitely my best moment playing for the club.
Luke, you went out on loan. You mentioned obviously you were in Belgium, but you also went out to Reading and to Burnley. At that time, was the boss looking at you and saying, there's a good way to build up experience and you'll come back a better player? Or did you start thinking at that time that I'm not getting the kind of game time I want to get, and maybe just going out on loan is actually better for me, to be out on loan and playing games as opposed to being at United with Becks and Giggs on the wings? I don't think anybody else was going to get a game.
No, I think when I went out to Reading and to Burnley, I sort of knew my time at United had come to an end. When I played I played in the a few games in the 2000-2001 season. Then the next season, I picked up a few injuries, which resulted in having some surgery on my pelvis and hip area. And when I came back from that, I never really had the same pace. I think my game was really built around speed. That was my standout sort of ability to have to get into the squad in the first place. And without that real electric speed, I don't think I had enough in the locker to be a regular at United, in the likes of David Beckham. If he weren't getting joy in wide areas, he could drop deep and hit a 70-yard pass, or Giggsy who could come inside and receive the ball inside. Or I was maybe a bit too much of a one-trick pony where I'd just try and run with the ball every time I got it. And without the speed, I couldn't really get away with it. So Sir Alex spoke to me and sort of said that I won't have a career at Manchester United without the speed. And it'll be real tough to have a career sort of at the top level of the game. So although obviously hard to hear, I appreciated that honesty, and I went off to Reading and Burnley just to try and find another path into and be a professional footballer, because that was always the dream to be a professional footballer.
You just mentioned your injuries and surgery with the pelvis and hip area, and then further on in your career, you also had back injuries and other injuries. So how did those play in your career as a whole, and how hard is it for a player to keep coming back from injury and come in with the same motivation and the same drive to excel in football?
Yeah, I think I was always someone who just loved playing football. So there was like the motivation behind it. Obviously picked up quite a lot of injuries, but just loving playing football obviously helps a lot to get you back fit again. I did suffer a lot of injuries, but I think looking back now, I don't think I would have changed that, because I think being injured is a massive learning curve and a massive opportunity for reflection to really become not a better footballer, but a better person in life, really. So although suffering from a lot of injuries, I think it really did help me develop to the person that I am today.
Okay, so Luke, we've spoken about your coaching as well. What made you take that career path, and why not punditry or any other field?
I think when I come towards the end of my career, I was sort of thinking, what am I going to do? And I went through my coaching qualifications. I never really saw myself being a coach when I was playing. I weren't really interested in it all that much, really. But you sort of get a bit worried towards the end of your career, because you need to find another job and do something. So I sort of fell into the coaching and got a job at Cambridge United, where I finished my career within the academy, but never really enjoyed it that much. I never really loved doing what I was doing. Obviously, it's hard to find something that replicates playing football, because it's going to be real tough to do that. But I never loved coaching within a professional environment. So I sort of stepped away from that and stepped away from professional football, and now still involved in a coaching organisation called the Football Fun Factory. But that's all around making football fun for young children between 2 and 12. It's not about developing professional footballers. It is purely about fun and using football as a vehicle to develop real positive life skills like teamwork, communication, sportsmanship, that sort of thing. So it's a real rewarding thing that I'm doing at the moment, and something that I'm quite passionate about and really hope to develop further.
I read about it and I was very intrigued, and I hope to ask you a few about that as well. So is the program limited to a certain area in England, or is it all over? Or is it online?
At the moment in time, it's just around the Cambridge area where I live. We are now starting to grow, and the plan is to franchise it out. And the long-term goal is to have football fun factories all over the world. It's a real lofty ambition, but we really are so passionate about making football fun and really developing that lifelong love for the game from the ages of 2 and 3 years old. And when you're an old bugger like me at 39 or whatever, you still love playing football, and that's the aim of it, really.
If you ever want to bring it to Pakistan, you can hit me up and I'll just set it up as well, because the scope for football here is not as popular as cricket. So what we're doing is obviously trying to increase the scope for football in this country. And Football Fun Factory would be a good start for us as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'd love to. In the future, we'd love to have Football Fun Factory. Sorry, it's easy for me to say. Football Fun Factories in Pakistan and all over the world. So I'll definitely take you up on that in the future.
Okay, so you played with Roy Keane. How different was Roy Keane as a player to Roy Keane as a pundit?
Probably quite similar, I'd say. It was. I remember when I came back from Belgium, had the first training session with the first team, and Roy Keane was sort of having a go at me, having a go at everyone if things weren't going well, and I'm thinking, oh, flipping heck, this is going to be tough here every day training. But he done it to raise the standards. He was the captain and the ultimate captain and leader within the players, and drove the standards every day. We always used to, well, some of the young guys used to have a joke when we'd play a little game in the training sessions. We used to hope we weren't on Roy's team, because you knew if you were on his team, you'd have to work your socks off and do everything you can possible to win, because otherwise he'd tell you in no uncertain terms. But off the pitch, he was an amazing man and really looked after all the players, particularly the young players. There was times where I couldn't drive and he'd come and pick me up from my apartment and take me to training. He'd always help with any problems that you had. So he was hard on the pitch. He was hard, and rightly so, because it was an elite environment where success meant everything really. But off the pitch as well, he was a real fantastic man.
Luke, Manchester United fans, we always say Luke Chadwick 1, Steven Gerrard 0, and we're never going to stop chanting that. So being part of a League Cup winning, and being part of a league winning side, winning the Premier League as you did, what goes through your mind? United, that was the third one that we won on the trot. And at that time, you were still young. You couldn't have been more than 21. So you're 21 years old. You're a league winner. You won the Premier League. What's the feeling like? What was it like for the senior guys? They were winning multiple ones and maybe winning, the third one on the trot. But it was your first. You played a part. You scored goals. What was going through your mind at the time when we won the league that year?
Yeah, obviously it was incredible. It was like a dream come true. Like it was such a whirlwind that season. It felt so surreal to be part of the first team squad and to actually played enough games to receive a medal. I think maybe not appreciate it as much, like you say, being such a young guy and just sort of taking it for granted a little bit. But looking back now, it's just something where you think, wow, I've won the Premier League. I don't think I did that much in terms, if I weren't in that squad, I'm pretty sure they still would have won it. But it's something that I would tell my kids about it all the time. I've still got the medal in the house, and it'll be a story to tell my grandchildren in years to come, I'm sure.
And then we saw at that time when you guys won the league, we saw that, I remember as a young fan at the time thinking, we're unbeatable. We follow up the treble with 3 leagues on the trot. But then Arsenal came back and they did very well to win the title. Did Sir Alex then, you think he changed something? What was his reaction like to not being champion for once? Because we know when he was champion, there was always talk, like you said, about Keane wanting to push on, not being happy with one trophy. He wanted more. Was Sir Alex the same, maybe in a different way? Was he stung by the fact that Arsenal, because we hate Arsenal. At that time, the rivalry was at its feet. They hate us, we hate them. So what was it like going into the season after that, when he broke the money, brought in Veron, brought in Van Nistelrooy, What was the mood like at the club?
I think obviously the mood was incredible with, like you said, he'd won 3 Premier Leagues on the trot, brought in world-class players like Veron and Van Nistelrooy. I think what had happened since the treble season, we fell a little bit further behind in terms of in European football, where the 4-4-2 that Sir Alex would play every week weren't working, where we get overloaded at times in the midfield areas. So I think bringing Ruud and Severin was to try and really catch up in terms of Europe. I think Carlos Queiroz come in as the coach to really change things around and look at things a bit more tactically. So I think it was a transition period at the club where Sir Alex wanted to get closer to them top European teams that were maybe pulling away a little bit tactically. So it was a transition, but I think it was always every season at Manchester United, you go into it expecting to win the Premier League, because that was what Sir Alex bred into everyone at the club. We were there to be winners and win the league. So it was obviously a huge disappointment when that did happen. Like you say, Arsenal came along with a fantastic squad, but I think despite however fantastic their squad was, Sir Alex still would have been expecting that his team would beat them. So it was obviously a tough time, but at the same time trying to transition into a more effective Champions League team as well.
Which we saw, happening later on, because it paid the dividends by the time we had the Ronaldos and the Tevezes. A lot of the younger fans, Luke, I keep harping on about it, and they keep telling me I'm an old-timer. They don't realize how good Seba Veron was. Now, I know he didn't have the career most people wanted him to have at United, but I've read everyone from Roy Keane to Ryan Giggs to Gary Neville say that on the training pitch, he was something else. What was it like seeing him train?
Oh, he was amazing. Like the awareness that he had, his passing ability, it was incredible. This is someone, he come in my second season, is someone I'd watched on the telly with that little bit of bandage around his leg that he always used to wear in every game, that iconic sort of thing. And he came in to train, and he was a big character, always so brave, wanted to take the ball all over the pitch. And I think it was probably that being too brave in a way and wanting to make too much of an impact that probably cost him being so effective at Man United. It was such a change, I think, from having Roy and Scholesy as a central midfield pairing as the number one choice, and Butty were quite similar, where Seba was a bit more of a free spirit, where he'd sort of go into different areas to receive the ball. And I think that sort of maybe cost him having a great career at United, because of the structure that the club wanted to play in. But as a footballer, there's not many more gifted than Veron.
Yeah, it was absolutely beautiful to watch. I keep telling the younger lot, and they keep saying, well, what did he win? I said, he won a Premier League, but never mind. Seba Veron, he was just beautiful to watch, the way he would run and score. And like you said, I think maybe if he'd been younger and we brought him in after Queiroz had been there for some time, the system would have probably suited him a bit more. Coming in to break up the Scholes and Keane midfield wouldn't have been easy for anybody. Just like for yourself trying to break one of Beckham or Giggs. So bringing in a player at that time paying £28 million, then you weren't going to, stick him in somewhere else. And he was too different to the rest of them.
Yeah, and I think Seba would have been more effective, and if he was sort of given a bit more of a license, if they always is still at that stage wanting to keep two up front in terms of two strikers. And I think for Seba to really be like the world-class player that he was, it would have meant playing a third player in midfield, which they did at times, but I don't think it was ever seen as the norm and something they were going to do on a regular occurrence, really.
Okay, so you've spoken about Sir Alex as well. We just want to know your famous hair dye treatment that you ever saw or received yourself. So
there was one, I'll talk about one I received myself. I don't want to speak about other people or bring up old memories for them. There was one time where there were, as a reserve game at Old Trafford on a Thursday near Christmas, and the guys were going out on their Christmas party on the Tuesday, and I was one of the reserve team players and was told, all the reserves were told not to go to the Christmas party. I ended up going. I just drove and dropped some of the lads off, but there was some incidents happened and some fighting occurred or something, and we went into training the next day, and there was all pictures in the newspaper, which somehow I'd appeared in one. And I saw Sir Alex walking down the corridor, and he was absolutely fuming. He was so angry about what happened. I was probably the least of his worries, but he just saw me out the corner of his eye and shouted, you find 2 weeks' wages. So that was me, find 2 weeks' wages. That day at the club was the Christmas dinner. Like every year at Carrington, the staff would serve the players Christmas dinner as a bit of a treat, a bit of fun for Christmas. And Sir Alex was serving bowls of soup, and he saw me sitting at the table, and he sort of slammed a bowl of soup down in front of me and said, that'll be the most expensive bowl of soup you ever eat, because obviously he just fined me 2 weeks' wages. There was another time when I was going out the club, where he wanted me to go on loan to Cardiff, because Lenny Lawrence was a big friend of his and he was the manager there, but I wanted to go to Reading, and he had a bit of a a pop at me that day as well. It was always very scary when the manager shouted at you, but probably worse than how scared you were, it was the fact that you felt like you'd let him down in a way. There's no one better than Sir Alex to give you praise, like I mentioned, but again, no one worse than him to tell you off because you felt like you'd let him down, and he was the one person that you always wanted to impress at the club.
All right. Luke, you've had multiple careers, you've played for multiple clubs. So you've had loan spells at Reading and Burnley and also at Royal Antwerp. So how different is it for playing for a club other than Manchester United when it comes to being in the media hype, the pressure on the pitch, the expectations from fans? How different is it, and how did those loan spells help you develop as a footballer?
Yeah, I think it's completely different at any other club when you've left Man United. Obviously, the spotlight is so intense at Manchester United. It's the biggest football club in the world. Once you leave there, it's always completely different. I think the lessons, though, that I learned at Manchester United in terms of what it takes to be a footballer, the human qualities as well, has really stood me in good stead to have a career out the game. There's a lot of players like me who sort of didn't quite make the grade at Manchester United, but then went on to have a career in professional football. And I think that's all down to the lessons that you're taught at the club from the age of 14, 15, or from whenever I signed for them. It was always about how you were as a person was just as important as the football field. That is what Manchester United is all about, developing good people and good footballers at the same time. So the club done everything for me, really, in terms of learning lessons, life lessons, football lessons, then to go on and have a career in the game. So I think it was more the lessons that I learned at Man United allowed me to have a career in football rather than the lessons that I learned at the other clubs that I played for.
And while we're on the subject, how do clubs on which you're on loan with, how do they treat you as a player, considering they're not looking at you for the long run? So how do they formulate their team strategy around a player on loan? And does that hamper the growth process, or are you happy with the fact that you're involved? And how do you choose a club for loan? Somebody that promises you playing time, or somebody that promises you a certain playing position? How does it work?
Yeah, so I think the club that you go to want to make it as comfortable as possible. So every time I've been on loan, I've been made to feel completely part of the club. I think a loan move, it looks to benefit both parties, really. So if I'm a player going on loan, it probably means that I'm not playing much at the club I'm at. So it gives me the opportunity to play games. And obviously the club that's taking you on loan want to sign you. They want you as part of their squad to move them forward. I think the times that I've been on loan, it has sort of been probably with the eye to sign permanently in the end of it. So it was always a case of to go and perform and then get a deal at the club at the end of it. So I think it's always mutually beneficial for both parties, and you're always made to feel like you're part of it. You don't feel like you're just there for 3 months. In my case anyway, I always felt like I was completely part of the club for the time that I was there.
Luke, you played under 21 for England, and you were playing at that time. Did it ever come in discussion, or did the youth set up in England ever tell you that you're on the right track and they think you'd be up for full honours? Because at that time we had an exciting under 21 side, and the first team, the England team, with the exception of how they qualified for the World Cup, they weren't doing so well when Sven came in. So was that something ever branded about, or the youth coaches at the England level, the under 21 coaches tell you that, if you keep playing like this, there's a good opportunity? Or did you need to have more club level games and more club form to be considered for England youth?
Yeah, it's a funny story actually. I was so shocked to be in the under 21 squad because the first time I was named in it, I'd never played. I played one first team game in the Worthington Cup. I was just playing reserve team football because what happened, I played for the England under 18s team, and the manager was Howard Wilkinson, and he was probably my biggest fan in terms of he always told the players to pass the ball to me, and I'd run with the ball. So I was fortunate in the fact that Howard went from the under-18s manager to become the under-21 manager. So as soon as he got that job, he put me straight in the squad. So I remember turning up for my first under-21 game, and there was the likes of Frank Lampard, Jamie Carragher, big players, and I don't think they had a clue who I was because I'd never really played first-team football before. So it was a real honour to obviously represent my country. There was probably a couple of times where England was struggling for a wide left player where there was sort of rumours, and the manager spoke to me a little bit about the possibility of moving into the full squad, but it never materialised, which is obviously a shame because there would have been to get a Premier League winners medal and an England cap would have been quite an achievement, I think. But it never happened in the end. But like I say, it was a real shock to get into the under-21 squads. But then I felt more comfortable in there as time moved on.
You talk about wide left, Luke. It was a problem area for us for a very long time, to the point that England started playing Scholesy there just to try and accommodate more people. And yet, obviously, there were players like yourself. Do you think that there was a lack of, I don't want to say vision, but do you think they could have been a bit more adventurous? We see other countries, for example, sometimes take young players as part of larger squads, whether it's friendly games or whether it's England's record in qualifying these last few years has been amazing. But we're also seeing more younger players being given an opportunity to go out there without the fear that, if they don't succeed immediately, then their career is over. We saw a lot of one-cap wonders from that generation, the golden generation of your Ferdinands, your Gerrards, your Scholes, and yet we underachieved as a country. So do you think they could have been a bit more adventurous and given guys like yourself or maybe other younger players an opportunity just for even a game or so to try something different?
Yeah, potentially. I think even in my case, I was another right-footed player that played on the left wing. I don't think there was any real, strangely enough, I can't think of Matty Everington. Obviously had a good career. He was a similar age to me. Potentially was more of a natural wide left player. Obviously, Paul Scholes played there. It weren't his best position. He was obviously a world-class central midfield. Joe Cole had a lot of time there, but it was a real issue. I think rather than maybe play younger players, I think there was opportunity to change the system. I think, again, in England, we were still so insistent on playing a flat four across the midfield, where in the case of with Gerrard, Lampard and Scholesy, it could have been the best midfield three in the world at the time with them three in there. So I think we was a bit, maybe could have gone down that route and changed the system to suit the players rather than just squeeze the players into the system that the country wanted to play.
Because we saw Alan Shearer retire after Euro 2000. We saw Paul Scholes retire as well, We amongst ourselves were discussing how little Michael Carrick, a player as brilliant as Michael Carrick, was used by England because we were so adamant that we're going to go 4-4-2 and play the English way. And obviously, in the long run, it didn't work out for us. And then the only good left-footed players we seem to be making come from Wales. If it wasn't Giggsy, then it was Gareth Bale. And we're sitting there thinking, what are they drinking the water up there? They're producing one world-class left-footed player after the other. And we've got amazing guys on the right, but nobody really on the other side of the pitch.
Yeah, and I think, again, it could have been about shifting the system about, like you see a lot of teams playing three at the back there, and obviously Ashley Cole is a world-class fullback who I'm sure could have played that role as a left wing back. And I think we're looking at all the different systems that get played now. I think we were so sort of one-tracked back in them days of playing the forward midfield. That was probably the biggest problem that we had, that we didn't have that vision, which is strange really with the likes of Sven-Goran Eriksson in charge, that we didn't change the system up a little bit. And like you say, we were blessed with some of the Michael Carrick, you mentioned Paul Scholes, Steven Gerrard, Frank Lampard, and it was always around trying to get Lampard and Gerrard in the same team, where I think if you add Scholes or Carrick to a three there, you're not going to get many better midfields than that.
So, Luke, while we're on the subject, you've played alongside, having played alongside those two, who would you rate higher, Scholes or Lampard?
Yeah, I played with Stephen in the young England team, so the under-18s and the under-21s, and he's an absolute phenomenon even back then. But the best player I've ever played with is Scholes. In training every day, he was an absolute genius. The man can do everything. It was like he had eyes in the back of his head. He could just see you coming without even looking and just play the ball around the corner, long passing, short passing. He was in a squad of the best players in the world. Scholes, he still stood out a little bit amongst them as the best I've ever played with. He was a genius.
Okay, so Luke, there's this assumption that Sir Alex wasn't involved too much in tactics before it was Brian Kidd, and then Carlos Queiroz came along, and then Rene Williamstein, and then Mick Phelan as well. So how much truth is there to that?
I think Sir Alex obviously always picked the team to beat the opposition, and he did speak a lot about tactics. At the same time, I do think he trusted his coaches a lot as well to do a lot of the work during the week to set the team up and sort of look at different tactical things that they were going to try and do on the Saturday afternoon or in the Champions League game. So I think he obviously tactically knew everything, the man, but I think his real genius was around getting everyone pulling together to work together to achieve these incredible things, and trust his coaches a lot to deliver a lot of the tactical insight as well.
Luke, you obviously, we just move on from United a little bit. You joined West Ham, and then obviously you had spells. You had spells at Stoke. Moving on, when you went to West Ham, you were relatively young still at the time. So moving to London, going to West Ham, still a club, which they had a good enough team at the time. How different was it, obviously, from leaving United? But did you go in thinking that you're going to be playing more regular football? Did you get to play more regular football when you moved to West Ham, more regular Premier League football?
So when I went to West Ham, they were actually in the Championship, so we weren't in the Premier League. When I went to West Ham, it was a real time for me where I was sort of changing the way I played a lot. I had to sort of find different ways to be effective in the game without being able to just sort of run with the ball all the time. So it was a real transition period. It's a fantastic club, West Ham, and I think a massive club to be in the Championship and a real pressure environment at Upton Park. So it's certainly my experiences at Manchester United helped with that. I think being in that transition period, I don't think the club ever really saw the best of me as a player. I don't think I played some good games and some bad games as well, but probably weren't consistent enough in that season. We did get promoted at the end of that season back to the Premier League, but it was a great club to play for. I moved back to Cambridge and travelled there, so it was an opportunity for me to come home. I've just started a family, so it was opportunity for my wife and child to come home and live and grow up in the area that I grew up in. So it was real positives about my move to West Ham. Maybe I could have done a little bit better on the pitch, but it was a great experience.
Luke, the English media isn't really forgiving. And unfortunately, you had some instances with the media in which they were not too kind with you. How did that affect your career as a player, and how did you cope? How did the team management help you with all of that? And if Sir Alex Ferguson had a part in steeling you against the criticism you were receiving?
So yeah, that obviously while I was at Manchester United, I got a lot of criticism, not really about football, more about the way I looked and my appearance, which affected me quite a lot. I struggled with it so much, but I was such a quiet, shy person that I wouldn't talk about it to anyone. So I just sort of, if anyone asked me about it, I'd just say I was fine and not worried. I don't think it affected me on the pitch. I think on the pitch, that was the release, something I loved doing. It was more away from the pitch where I wouldn't want to go out the house. I'd want to stay in my apartment all the time because I was so worried what people were saying about me, because there was all this stuff on the television and the newspapers. So it was a real difficult time. I never even spoke to my parents about it, my family about it, because I was so embarrassed. It was such a silly thing, like something that had happened in the playground, and I thought there was something wrong with me because I felt so bad about it. I didn't know how to deal with it at all, really. So it was like a real tough time, but a time that, because I was unwilling to talk about it, I had to sort of get through by myself. I think, like I said, when I left Man United, it was never as bad really, because you're not under that spotlight anymore and it was easier to deal with. But the times being a first team player, I was so sort of shocked and quite naive really, because I never really saw myself as being a famous footballer. All I wanted to do was play football. So I was so shocked to see that I was like quite famous. But the reason I was famous was because of the way I looked really, which was something that really hurt my feelings, I think.
Look, we see with the media, as Trad pointed out, that there seems to be a perverse sort of interest in footballers, whether it's their private lives, what they ate, why they wet hair. Obviously, football is the biggest thing in the country. But do you think that now, with the world that we live in today, do you think there need to be more regulations for the media? Do you think, because they have to be held to standards as well? We see players being held to standards all the time. You, for example, couldn't be out at 1 a.m., having a drink with your mates, even after a game, because it would be like, Premier League superstar out late at night with mates when he should be at home sleeping, even if you don't have a game. The media can go ahead and say anything they want to say about you. They can go ahead and say anything about people's personal lives. They can talk about other things. There's no one really holding them responsible for the kind of stuff they spew.
No, to be honest, I do think in terms of the media, things have got a little bit better in terms of the criticism people get. I think that what I went through with the TV shows and that sort of thing, I don't think that would be allowed to happen in this day and age. I do think the real issue now and the problem is social media. I think social media can be a great thing in terms of footballers, because it gives the players a platform to sort of show that they are human, a chance to interact with the fans and that sort of thing. But at the same time, it gives people such an easy, I think that needs to be regulated better. It's such an easy opportunity for people to say such awful things. I don't know if you saw it, there was stuff in the newspaper a couple of weeks ago where Ian Wright received awful racist abuse on a social media platform. And I think that sort of thing shouldn't happen to anyone, whether it be Ian Wright or anyone else. But I think that probably needs to be regulated better. I would say in the terms of media, I don't think it is as bad as it was. And I think the media are sort of trying to work with the players to really humanise them. I don't think that happened in the past when I was sort of coming through. The players were just footballers. That was all they were seen as. They weren't really people as well. But now I think there is a platform. You see during this awful lockdown period, the incredible work that Marcus Rashford and other sports people have done. So I do think things have improved slightly in the media, and I think social media has got a lot of positives, but the negatives as well. So I think there needs to be more regulation. I don't know how that can be done, but within social media.
You were still quite young when all of this criticism was taking place, Do you think at the time, if you were a regular first-team player, an England player, maybe in your mid-20s, you think you would have reacted to it differently, maybe spoken to the gaffer or spoken to the club or, spoken to someone else about it? Because at 20, to be ridiculed for something like that, and like you said, the TV shows and things just getting away with it because there was no one to take them to task.
Yeah, possibly. I think that is sort of a problem maybe within football. I left school at 16, moved straight up to Manchester to become a footballer, and my whole life was football. I probably didn't, at the age where it was happening at 19, 20, I didn't know myself well enough. I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't really have that emotional intelligence to know if I talk out about this, it's probably going to make things better, because I was so embarrassed about it, and I never wanted to say a word about it. So potentially if I was a bit older, I knew myself a bit better, I would have been more comfortable speaking about it and coming through it that way.
Okay, so Luke, if we move back to United, do you still watch the team?
Yeah, still watch the team as much as possible. I've been up last season a few times working with MUTV, so I went and watched been a pundit on the under-18s game, and I went up to the Norwich game, so it was fantastic to go back to Old Trafford and see a few familiar faces. So I certainly think it was a real tough few years, and I think we all knew it would be when Sir Alex left. But does seem to be a bit of a buzz around the club again now, particularly with Ollie in charge, who's an absolute legend at the club, and he's obviously learnt a lot of lessons from Sir Alex in his time there, and you can see he wants to do things quite similar and build that vibrant environment that breeds success and bringing the young players through. So it's a really exciting time at the moment, and I do think there's massively positive signs for the club to kick on again next season.
You've played alongside Ole as well. So did you ever think that he was going to become manager of any club, let alone Manchester United?
Probably not at the time. I think Ollie was quite a quiet man, but what he did have was incredible hunger to succeed. He'd work so hard in the gym, so hard on the training pitch, and I think he always had that work ethic about him. He probably weren't as vocal. You'd probably look at the likes of Roy Keane and Gary Neville and think maybe they're the ones that go on to be managers because of how vocal they were. But the game and the world's changed a lot now, where different personalities are more effective. And I think Ollie's proving that at the moment. And I'm sure he is certainly the man for the job and someone that can bring the good times back.
Okay, so Hassan.
Look, again, sorry, because we use this platform to, educate a lot of the younger fans who obviously haven't been watching United for as long or don't go back. You mentioned Scholesy, obviously. Everyone knows about Scholes. He played on for a long time. Who else in your time at United stood out for you as a player, and you looked at them and you thought, okay, wow, this is someone I'm seeing every day, and they just either make the game look so easy or they're world class, whether it's Ruud van Nistelrooy, we spoke about Seba Veron, but also for me, from around, it would have coincided with your career at United. I don't think people realize how good Jaap Stam was, for example, and they just, nowadays we see, obviously, with so much money being spent on defenders. So what was it like training with these people? Who was the toughest defender during your time with the first team to train against?
Oh God, that's a tough one. There's so many. Probably as a young player coming through, like when under 15, under 16, the one that we always used to look up to was Wes Brown. He was a year above me, and he was like an absolute Rolls Royce of a player, and he was always seen to be one that was going to go on and have an incredible career like he did. Then I remember in training, I was sort of having a lot of joy being able to run past everyone with the ball. Then about 6 weeks later, a lad come over called John O'Shea, and it was impossible to get past him. He was such a good defender. Then moving through, I mean, the list is endless, really. The player that I probably struggled playing against the most in training was Mikel Silvestre. He was so strong and fast. He was just impossible to get past. Jaap Stam, you mentioned, an incredible servant to the club, so strong, a real good character as well, another leader in the team. Dennis Irwin, probably the most underrated player, a world-class fullback who people outside of Manchester United probably don't give him the credit he deserves, because he was a 7, 8 out of 10, so consistent week in, week out. I was lucky enough to do a lot of stuff with, obviously, David Beckham and Ryan Giggs, because I was a wide player, so just to spend time with them. And Giggs, he was running with a ball, he would just wriggled away, and once he took it past you, there was no way of getting past. And Beck's, like, his delivery was freakishly good, really. Like, everyone, you'd be out crossing with him, and 5 out of 10 of mine would go into the keeper's hands or behind the goals, and 10 out of 10 of Bex's was just on the money every time. So just watching and being around these players was incredible.
Luke, from that time when you were coming through, obviously as a first teamer, and it gets said a lot, United had a bit of a barren run with the youth setup at that time. We played a lot of youth players, but we didn't get too many of that generation come through to the first team. Is there anyone you remember from your time as a first teamer and in the youth setup who you thought could have gone on to make it or play, or should have gone on to make it but didn't go on?
No, I think it's hard to say that within terms of my era. I know not that many players come through, and you had to be incredible to get through. I think the reason because of that is because that squad was so strong, and obviously it was such a world-class players. It was so hard to get. It's so much credit to the likes of Wes and John O'Shea to come through at that time and have real stellar careers at the club. I think there was hundreds of really, really good players, but not world-class players to break into that squad that we're speaking about now. Probably one of the best squads that the club's had for many a year.
Absolutely. And then Luke, sorry, if we just move on. You went to Milton Keynes. You're 30 years old. You know, you picked up the Player of the Year award twice. What did you change in your game by then to go from being the exciting young winger, because you mentioned after the injuries your pace wasn't the same, but you were doing something right to go there, pick up Player of the Year not once but twice. What was the main transition for you in your career as a professional for that?
I think it was obviously staying fit for a prolonged period of time. I think I was really settled at Milton Keynes. I was back living in Cambridge. It was not much of a journey. My family was settled. I was happy in everything I was doing, really. I think I'd really gone through that transition period by then and realised that I'm really, really slow now, not fast at all. So I've got to completely change my game. So I played in more of a central position, so I was involved in the game a lot of the time. And again, probably the reason I won the Player of the Year trophies is because I worked so hard. Maybe not because of pure football ability, but them lessons, like I spoke about earlier, that I'd learned at Manchester United about the work rate and what it entails. That's probably the main reasons that I've won individual awards.
Okay, so if we talk about the current squad, which player excites you the most?
I think like the most exciting one are the ones that are coming through. I like Rashford. I love watching Rashford play. Greenwood looks like he could be world class if he keeps going the way he's going. So I think their ones, obviously, Bruno's come in and seemed to have changed everything, just flicked a switch or something and changed the whole mood at Old Trafford where people believe again with him in the team. And I'm watching him and Pogba playing together yesterday. There was some moments of pure brilliance, really. So I think the young one, Brandon Williams, who I've seen him play a couple of times, he looks quite similar to Dennis Irwin, a right-footed player playing at left back who finds that pass and breaks the lines. I think McTominay is another one coming through, looks so hungry and he's so athletic and he can cover so much ground. It is, I think, where we're at a stage now where you can roll 6 or 7 off, where probably 3-4 years ago you were struggling to find somebody really excited you. So I think things are looking good at this moment in time.
Okay, so if we speak about your connections to United right now, so which player are you still close with?
So I probably don't speak to too many. I've done some stuff with MUTV, so I speak to David May a little bit. He was with me at Burnley when I played there through it as well. So he's an incredible character. I caught up with Wes the other day, the first time I spoke to him for a while. So it was great to catch up. So I think even though when you've not spoke to each other for a long time, playing football together, and particularly at Manchester United, you've got that bond together. So it doesn't really matter how long you've not spoke for. You've got that spark straight away when you have the conversation. So it's always great to catch up with the players.
And which United player are you going to recommend us to come on our show?
Well, that's why I'm going to struggle, because I don't speak to many. I think Mays been on, hasn't he? Has David May been on?
Legend.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Has Wes Brown been on?
No.
Maybe
on. We'd love nothing more than if you could put in a word with Wes, please.
Yeah, I'll try. It might be worth getting Maisie to as well, because I think Maisie's with him a fair bit with the work that they're doing with the MUTV.
Great, we got 2 people to ask, so it increases our chances.
Yeah.
And obviously, Luke, sorry, Ismail. Obviously, we always also make it a point of, for us as fans and for so many of the younger fans who will view this later, it's such a great opportunity to talk to someone who's come through at United, who's been on the pitch at Old Trafford, who's played for Sir Alex, who's, as I will remind everybody, won a Premier League title more than Steven Gerrard. Never going to stop talking about that. So for us, it's such an honor and a pleasure to have you. And what we always want to do is that we want to try and get football to become a little bit bigger here in Pakistan. It's a cricket mad country, but we've got 150 official members. paid up. We're all paid up Manchester United members. You know, it's the passion here and the love for United is no less than you'll find anywhere else. We sometimes have screenings 2 or 3 in the morning, you know, and I keep repeating this one. You're up at 2 in the morning. Sometimes people drive 3 or 4 hours, come watch a screening, watch us lose 1-0 at home to Burnley, and then drive back. But people will take that time out of their day. So when things get better, we'd love for you to come visit us in Pakistan in any capacity, whether it's through United or otherwise. You know, we'd love to host you and bring you out here. And obviously with Football Fun Factory, maybe that's something in the future that would be great to get kids playing the game more over here. So it would be an absolute honor for us to have you out here when things settle down. And like we told everybody else, we told Maisie and the rest of them, we've got much better food than India, so that's why you want to come out here. It'll be worth the trip.
Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. Obviously, as a footballer, you don't get to travel too much. All you see is sort of the hotel room and the football pitch. So obviously, it's a great opportunity now I'm finished to travel. So it'd be a pleasure to come and meet you guys. It's been a pleasure speaking to you again.
Thank you so much for your honesty and for telling us everything. Absolutely, it's been such an honor for us to speak to you. You know, because I'm the oldest fan probably. I'm definitely on the show. So I saw you coming through the team and I saw you playing. So when they told me they've got you, you know, I normally don't wake up this early, but I was like, nope, Luke's coming on. Got to be up. Got to be there. Got to be on time. So thank you. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you for being on.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Luke. Take care of yourself. Stay safe.
Take care. See you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.